Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by Ben, and today we are going to be talking about camera gear, more specifically, your camera gear journey. So Ben, tell me about your camera gear.
Okay, so when I first started being a cameraman, I chose Canon and didn't really know which way to go, but Canon it was. So I had a Canon XL2, it was my very first camera, and it recorded on mini DV tape. So 20 years back.
So for the people that don't know what a mini DV tape is, what is a mini DV tape?
Mini DV is a little digital, it's a cassette, very small, and it has a little tape inside, and it records digitally onto the tape. So it's still a physical tape, but it was just before we went on to memory cards.
Yeah, and I remember starting my video production journey with mini DV tapes, and I also remember they weren't fantastic for a few reasons. One reason was you could shoot for a whole day, or not a whole day, like they had like an hour or so of footage that you can record, but then offloading the footage, you then had to put it back into your camera and then feed it directly into the computer to then be able to edit it. It wasn't just like drag and drop like we can today with the memory cards. But also, if you had the mini DV tapes near a mobile phone, it could destroy or distort the footage that's on it. And that happened to me a couple of times, not on paid shoots or anything. This was back when I was a student. But when I was going through the tapes, capturing it onto my computer, I remember thinking, oh no, as I start seeing all these glitches and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that we've progressed past the mini DV stage.
Yeah, definitely. I had a few little hiccups as well on those tapes over the years. But yeah, as soon as we moved on, it was a very good day.
Yeah. So then what did you move on to?
Then I jumped over to Sony actually for a little bit. I had a Sony EX1R. After shooting with another camera guy, I had the Sony EX1. And it was a beautiful camera. It was all the lens built in, just did everything. And yeah, it was a great camera. So I grabbed one.
Yeah, I've shot with an EX1. What's the difference between the 1 and the 1R?
The R, they fixed just a couple minor little things. The image was pretty much the same. Just the user buttons and tiny little things.
Yeah, and this is all pre-interchangeable lens cinema cameras that we are we're well accustomed with today. Then from the EX1R, what did you then move on to?
Then Canon was still calling me back. So I went to a XH-A1. Yeah, that was a really nice digital camera.
And what would you find yourself shooting with this camera?
I was doing, a lot of corporate and a couple sporting things back then with that camera.
And did you find it was a good camera for those types of jobs?
Yes, it was very good. I knew Canon, that's what I started with. And there was a couple of things I missed and I know everyone says it, but Sony's menus were doing my head in when you change settings that were buried deep down in the menu and this, and just having the camera back in my hand, I just felt at home really. Like it was everything second nature. And I'm like, I really just enjoy shooting. I know where everything is, and Canon it worked better for me.
Yeah, so it was the menus that really did it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the menus, all right. It was the menus. Yeah. Image was pretty good as well, but yeah, the menus.
Yeah. And then moving on from that camera, what did you find yourself using?
I'd have to think back, but the 5D Mark II phenomenon came out. Full frame, 35mm, like everyone was shooting these beautiful images. And I didn't jump on straight away, but I went the 5D Mark III. When that came out and everyone had been using the Mark II, I'm like, all right, now's the time. And I'll get the bonus of having a great stills camera.
Yeah, so that was the DSLR revolution that a lot of people are, either they lived through or are now enjoying the benefits of these days. What was the game changer with that kind of DSLR revolution in your opinion?
The image straight away, you've got these beautiful soft backgrounds and interchangeable lenses. You can whack a 400mm on or whatever, and all of a sudden you have all these new options, but you also had a lot of new problems because you had no audio, the interface not very good. Then you had a tiny little body, and the cameras I started off my career with sort of mid-sized cameras. So I sort of missed the big broadcast. That was just before I started, that everyone was still shooting with those. And we had these medium cameras. So I'm sort of locked into the shoulder filming most of my things. But now we had this. And I'm like, how do you do this? So I had to rig it out. So we bought little shoulder rigs and little mounts and ended up being on the shoulder. And that was I shot for quite a long time, just like this. And this was before gimbals hadn't arrived yet. So this was my rig.
Yep. Yeah, there was problems. The thing is with video productions, the new product comes out to market and then it gets into people's hands, and then all of a sudden all the problems start to become very much apparent. And then a lot of the time there are workarounds. So you said that your workaround was to rig it out, but then as time has gone on, we've gotten gimbals and other stabilization devices like easy rigs and cine saddles and other things like that that help take these smaller cameras that might be a little bit different to operate, I guess, than those shoulder ones that people are used to. So yeah, there's always a problem with these cameras, and hopefully the camera producers end up solving them as well. So moving on from the DSLR cameras, what did you move on to next?
I stayed with them for quite a while, and we did use monopods and other things with them for tripods, monopods, and shoulder rig. And that lasted for quite a while. Then the more work I did, and I started doing a bit of audio work as well, and I'm like, I need my ND filters, I need good XLR connections. And then I went to the C100, came out, and this was a fantastic camera.
Yeah, I've shot with the C100. So did you just stay with the C100 or did you get the Mark II or what did you do?
Then the Mark II came out I jumped straight away.
Really?
It fixed all little problems.
All right, so talk me through what were the problems. So the C100 comes onto the scene. Great, this is solving all my problems. Oh, now I've got these problems. What were the new problems that it created?
The screen, the little fold-out screen was shocking to view in daylight, and to get focus and just exposure right, it was really bad. Besides that, great image, but then the C100 Mark II, it fixed that. You had a great screen, you could get a usable image very fast, and just those little things to make your life easier on set.
Yeah, it's nice when they bring out another camera and it fixes all those problems. And then, so you've gone from the DSLRs. At this stage, mirrorless wasn't really a thing yet.
Not yet,
no. So then we went to the C100, which is back to more of that kind of traditional video camera form factor, XLR inputs. If Canon could improve the C100 and the C100 Mark II at that time, what room for improvement would you have seen?
A lot of people were sort of thought, the ergonomics of it were quite unusual, and it was different. You've had a top handle up here and a grip here, and it was just, I guess a lot of the time you're shooting like this, and it depends what you're shooting really. But for me, I was rigging out these small cameras before it, and now I'm back to a little bit bigger. And then I started thinking, we rig all these cameras out, I'm like, why not just build a little bit bigger camera that sits on the shoulder? And then we're going back to how it was just before I started. And everything got smaller, but I sort of slowly got into this mode where I'm like, I love shooting from the shoulder and running around on the shoulder. That was the majority of work I was doing, and it just felt so comfortable. So I wanted a camera that was a bit bigger really to balance better on the shoulder.
Yeah, it's amazing. With technology over the years, it starts big and then they shrink it.
Yep.
And then it gets too small. And you're like, no, we want it bigger. So it just goes in those kind of cycles. So I'm guessing from the C100 Mark II, your next camera was?
C300 Mark II.
Which was a little bit bigger and solved some of those problems.
It was a little bit bigger and there was a big jump up. Quality was incredible. And then I ended up mounting a V-lock on the back of it. And all of a sudden, I had a comfortable camera with some Zacuto accessories, a shoulder mount camera. And I lived with this camera. Well, I've still got it now. It's seen me 8 years.
Yeah, great. That is a long lifespan for a camera. Yeah, you're very disciplined not to upgrade from that. So Zacuto accessories, talk me through those.
Okay, so they've got the shoulder mount, and that was it's padded, very comfortable. And then sometimes I'd use a extension arm, and then the C300, you could take the side grip off, whack that down here, and then all of a sudden your arm's gone from up here to down here, and you can run around all day with that rig.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, great. And I think that is a very traditional way to be able to operate the camera. One reason that I don't operate it that way is because I like having a camera set up on my tripod and then quickly go handheld. And I've got my own systems with, or my own technique, I guess, with the Cine saddle and all that. So I can rest the camera in the Cine saddle and not on my shoulder. And I do that mainly because of preference, but also speed in being able to go from one thing to another. Do you find that when you're arriving on set and then doing or arriving at an event and then needing to operate your camera, there's much setup time, or do you have it all dialed in and set up to a point where you've got it in a bag or whatever, pull it out, and then you're able to just start operating with it?
Yeah, I started getting pretty disciplined that the night before I would set the camera up, turn it on, get all the settings that I want for the job the next day. And it's just a much speedier process in the morning and one less thing to think about. So I would, some days I wouldn't be shooting on the shoulder, but the Sakudo shoulder rig actually has the clip in that you can go straight onto the tripod as well. So I can go quite fast from shoulder to tripod. And I also use a second camera, which is in a small rig when I want to be in a tighter space or something and not have this big bulky shoulder rig.
Yeah, second cameras are very helpful. What's your second camera?
Second camera at the moment is a C70.
Ah, okay. And you tell me about the C70.
Okay. C70 is a great camera. The image in the C70 is better than the C300 Mark II. And I've kept this as my gimbal camera. And it's, small, compact. The battery lasts forever, like 3-4 hours or something. So you only need one or two of them. Yeah, it's very user-friendly.
It's your second camera. Do you only use it for gimbal stuff, or would you find yourself using it for a multi-camera setup project?
Yeah, exactly. Multi-camera shoots. I'll take it out of the gimbal and we're both on the tripods. And I can match the images pretty well. And it annoys me how good the image out of the C70 was. And so I will eventually upgrade my C300 because I've sort of skipped one generation. So
because there was a Mark III.
Mark III. Yep. And that's, incredible camera. And now the C400 has been released. And I think it's about time where I can justify upgrading.
Yeah, get the new shiny toy.
Yes.
So tell me about the C400 from your research. Obviously, we're talking about it right now, and I think it's either just coming out onto the market. It hasn't been tested and used by a lot of people yet. What is the main difference from a C300 Mark II or even a Mark III with the C400?
So the C400, you have a full frame sensor. The C300 Mark II is a Super 35 sensor. So it's cropped in a little bit. If you put a full frame lens on the C400, you get that nice wide field of view. Where if I put that same wide full frame lens on the C300, it's cropped in and it's not showing as wide. And the C400 also has a triple base ISO. So it can shoot in very low light. So I don't always have the luxury of having all my lights being able to carry them around, especially at live events and things like that. So having that option where you can really shoot in low light, that's a big benefit.
Do you know what those three base ISOs are?
I'm used to 800, so it definitely has 800, then 3200, and then a crazy 12,800, I believe.
Yeah, which sounds nice on paper or looks nice on paper, but in actual practice, sometimes 12,800 is a little bit too much, depending on what you're shooting. I have the Sony FX6 and that has a base ISO of 800 and 12,800. If I go to the 12,800 base ISO, I'm then stopping my aperture down and all that kind of stuff. So I think having that 3200 base ISO is a really welcome addition for that. And if Sony was to do something like that, I'd be very happy. Is there anything else with the C400 that sticks out to you that is making you go, oh, I really need to upgrade?
There's a lot of codec options, which you don't always need the best quality, like not shooting everything in RAW or that. A lot of corporate events or in-house videos for these organizations, they don't need 6K or 4K or whatever. 1080 is fine. And occasionally you can whack it in that setting and you don't have this huge, crazy file. It's just nice, easy. You can easily transfer it at the end of the day.
Yeah, data management can be a bit of a nightmare. Can you talk me through your data management, how you do that? So you do a lot of agency stuff,
yes.
Or you shoot for people and then you hand the footage off to them. What is your workflow for that? How do you operate?
Sometimes at the end of the day, if someone has a laptop on set and you can transfer there and then while you're packing up, that's the best. Otherwise, we'll go home and internet's finally fast enough where I am with NBN. I can upload overnight, and normally like between 30, 60 gig gets no problem at all. So we can do a WeTransfer link. Otherwise, occasionally, someone that doesn't have good internet to download the footage, you're still sending on a hard drive occasionally.
So what I do with my agency stuff, I'm always shooting and handing the footage off. So I'm always bringing my laptop with some Samsung T7 SSD drives, because there's only so many times that someone can say, oh yeah, I'll bring a hard drive and you can transfer it then. And then you get to the shoot and then you've shot, sometimes it's hundreds of gigabytes of data, and they've got a 500 gig hard drive or a 1 terabyte hard drive, but it's a slow spinning HDD drive. And we're going to be there for a long time transferring all this data. So I've learned that, all right, I'll be self-sufficient as much as possible. And then I hand the drives over. And fortunately, I have enough repeat business with the agency that whenever I go to their office, I can then just pick up the hard drive and not have to worry about losing it or anything like that. So that's helpful for me. I do have a lot of those hard drives though as well, just so I don't run out. But that's been the most helpful thing for me, because unfortunately for me, my internet isn't super fast. So I can't really rely on doing the uploading overnight, because if it's 200 gigs of multi-camera shoots and that kind of stuff, they're going to be waiting days, if not weeks, for me to upload the footage. I do need to look at upgrading my internet, but it's one of those things where it hasn't become a deal breaker yet, that I really need to get that super fast fiber to the premises internet that we have in Australia. So going back to the C70 that you mentioned, they've just announced that there's a C80 coming out. Is that something that's piqued your interest and you might look at getting that instead of the C400, or are you kind of locked on to the C400?
I'm locked on to the C400 because I have the C70 already, and that's a great image. The C80 has a couple benefits over the C70, and that would be able to match full frame. But I have some beautiful Canon cinema lenses that are S35, and they are beautiful on the C70. So I'm thinking of matching those with the C70 and then upgrading to the C400 as the main camera.
And then when you upgrade your C400, you're going to need to upgrade your lenses as well?
Yes.
And that's more money.
More money.
Do you know what kind of lenses that you're looking at getting for the C400?
Yeah, they've just released a couple of their zoom cinema sort of style, and they look very nice. There's the 24-105 2.8, and there's a zoom attachment as well. So when I'm in shoulder rig, that'll suit my sort of style of shooting a lot. Then I'm hoping they bring out a really nice wide, and the RF mount also with the C400. So all the new style of lenses, I'm using EF at the moment. And I'll keep those as well. A lot of those I can use in photography as well when I do additional photography on jobs. Yeah.
So you're using your EF lenses on your C70, but that's an R mount camera. So you've got an adapter.
Yes, I have the speed booster, which makes it the full frame look.
Yeah, okay.
So increases one stop of light as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, that kind of feature of the speed booster. What are your thoughts on the speed booster?
It's great. It does replicate the look of full frame. And the only issue I have with it, when you have a very backlit, if there's a light in the background, you are going to get a crazy amount of lens flare, and it's sort of purplish. And that's the only negative I found with it. Really, everything else works great. The autofocus, face tracking, everything still works. And it's been beneficial that I can use all my old lenses still on the C70. But occasionally that little thing will annoy me on set.
Yeah, and I'm always hesitant of using adapters because they could fail, but it hasn't failed on you.
No, this was the one made by Canon, so
it can't fail.
It can't fail.
That's good to know. And you also mentioned gimbals before. Talk me through your gimbal setup.
I started off with the first Ronin, and it was a monster. The thing was huge. And yeah, I enjoyed using it. I tried to put the C100 on with a big lens and made some crazy rigs. And then they got smaller and smaller, and the technology changed very quickly. And all of a sudden, the C70 in a DJI RS3 Pro, it's a great combination.
And do you find that it gets your arms really tired really quickly? Like how long realistically can you be operating that setup?
You do get quite tired with that setup. I've done some shows where I'm filming for 5-6 hours with it. And yeah, I'm pretty racked the next day. And I've sort of got it dug into my hip a bit and then putting it down a lot and just resting every moment you can. But I'm working on a new rig at the moment with a easy rig and then having a different sort of attachment that can hold the gimbal as well.
Yeah, great. I use an easy rig with my gimbal setup, and I've got the Tilter Advance ring for the DJI 3. I've got the 3. I saw that the 4 came out and I was like, oh, I don't need that. So I was very disciplined and didn't just go buy now. But yeah, so I've got that kind of setup and I can shoot with that pretty much all day. And I've done that multiple times, shot all day, day after day for some of my clients because we're doing training videos and stuff like that. And that's just the setup that works best for those kind of shoots. So I did find when I first started doing that, I didn't have the easy rig. I had the advanced ring. And if I wanted to use the touch autofocus or whatever, how do you get focus? Because if I was to try to touch the screen, the shot would become unusable because I need to hold the ring with both hands. Talk me through how you keep focus with your gimbal setup.
So if I'm doing an interview or a walk and talk or something, face tracking, and just let the camera focus. But majority of the time I do manual focus with the little finger ring on the Ronin. I've set that up and with a little motor, and yeah, I do manual focus.
And you get the shot. You're happy with the focus. You're obviously not having a super shallow depth of field.
No, not all the time. But it depends. If you're getting B-roll and things like that, you can play with those nice, really shallow shots.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I'm pretty confident with my manual focus.
Last thing that we'll talk about in gear for Gear Talk is drones. Now, you've used drones. Talk me through your drone collection.
Okay, so the drone thing started and I jumped on board with the Phantoms. And yeah, one of my first flights, the thing took off and didn't come back. So I learned I had like a Bluetooth setting on or something, and there was these were brand new at the time. And when you read the fine print in the manual, you weren't allowed to have some setting on at the same time, and it got interference and it took off.
Oh, wow. That's a costly lesson.
And then so I was heartbroken. I was devastated. And then out of complete coincidence, it actually landed near the council's offices. And someone from the council handed it into the police station and they saw the footage and they saw where it took off from. And somehow it got back to me. So,
oh, wow. Yeah, okay. And you didn't break any laws or anything like that, and they didn't give you a fine in the drone?
No, I think they were laughing a bit because you could see the council workers come pick it up, and then they're sort of like, what's this? And this was the very early days. So I think everyone was a bit looser back then with the laws. So it's a lot stricter now. And yeah, I've had a lot more training. I only had a couple crashes, I guess 2 or 3, I think in over 10 years. But now I've probably be 5 years with no incidents. So
that's good. And what are you shooting with today?
Phantom 4 Pro V2, but that's one of the next purchases will be jump on board with the Mavic series.
Yeah, okay. And do you enjoy doing the drone shooting?
Yeah, it's very enjoyable actually.
I get a lot of anxiety with it. I'm just like, oh no, I can't go too far away, and oh, can I see it? And all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I like what the drone footage can bring to the projects. It just adds that little extra production value. But I haven't got any official training or anything like that. So I'm operating in the restricted rules and all that kind of stuff. So it's very limited. And I don't market myself as a drone pilot because I haven't got the official Australian regulation thingies and all that. But I am still doing it legally. So just so everyone's aware. And what do you find yourself using the drone mainly for?
It's a great tool for establishing shots, showing people the location, building, just places where you can never really get to. Clients are always quite impressed when you fly the drone. They're always excited to see that footage.
Yeah, it really does add that little extra to the project. And yeah, clients are always really happy when they get to see that kind of stuff. All right, Ben, well, thank you very much for joining us on the Your Story Studios podcast and talking about your camera gear.
Thanks, Nathan.